Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, I'm going to be talking about, well, some Utah Mammoth rumors. They're going to be trade rumors. It's not much in the way of free agency rumors because, well, I'll get into it, but this is probably the weakest free agent class in the history of the NHL. So it doesn't really matter that the Mammoth don't have a ton of cap space because there's nobody to go out and sign. I'll also then be talking about Real Salt Lake. Yeah, they're not doing too badly. I would like to see them perform a little better against the best in the league, but I mean they're winning games against teams that are at their level or below. So they're third in the Western Conference. Third. Yeah. I'll talk about their most recent game against Colorado in the Rocky Mountain Cup, and then some like bits and bobs from other sports in the state of Utah. ESPN recently did the players to watch for different awards for the top 25 teams. State of Utah has 2 in the top 25 in Utah and BYU. So I'll talk about those guys. I'll also talk a little bit about the Utah Jazz and just a bunch of the rumors that are out there and just the craziness that maybe I just need to get off of Reddit, but some of the craziness I've been seeing is a little ridiculous. So, yeah, that's pretty much what we have on tap today. Could be a shorter episode. It could not be. We'll see where my tangents go. But thank you all so much for being here. As always, please rate the show 5 stars wherever it is, however you listen. Like it, comment, whatever it is. And please do me a favor. I mean, you're already doing me a favor, but do me another one and share this with one person that you think might enjoy listening to Utah sports unfiltered, not sponsored or owned and operated by a different company. Just a local voice that kind of sees through the crap. That's what I try to be for you all. So, yeah, share this with that one person, and let's dive into things after I tell you about today's... Well, no, I don't have a sponsor. I wish. But you can find me on the socials. That is the Matt Cave Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's jump into it. And let's start with Real Salt Lake. So they played against the Colorado Rapids in the Rocky Mountain Cup. It's a rivalry, kind of. There's not really many rivalries in MLS. The battle for Los Angeles is definitely a rivalry. The battle for New York is as well. And if you don't know, the teams involved in those for Los Angeles, it's Los Angeles FC or LAFC and the Galaxy. And then in New York, you have New York Red Bulls, and you also have New York City FC. So those two are definite rivalries. Randomly, it hasn't really been a rivalry recently because neither team has been exactly all that great. In Sporting Kansas City and Real Salt Lake, it used to be a rivalry, but not so much anymore. So I guess by geography, it's a rivalry, kind of. But the Rocky Mountain Cup, it's an actual trophy. Like, they have an actual thing. Colorado has owned it the past couple of seasons, but Real Salt Lake gets it back after their most recent game, with Real Salt Lake winning this one in Sandy 2-1. And they came back, actually. So Real Salt Lake went down very early. It was a very poorly defended corner kick that Colorado was able to kind of knock around and get into the net in the 7th minute. Yeah, that's really putting yourself behind the 8 ball really early. But as the game wore on, Real Salt Lake's... I mean, I've been saying this a lot, Real Salt Lake's youth, but when I talk about their youth, it's more about just the energy they have. And it feels like they just kind of run teams into the ground. And if you look at the possession numbers, it was pretty even. 47% for Real Salt Lake, 53% for Colorado. So if you look at possession, it kind of leads you the wrong direction because you look at the other stuff, and remember, do not box score watch. But shots on goal, Real Salt Lake doubled Colorado 8-4. Shot attempts doubled them again, 17-8. Real Salt Lake also committed more than double in fouls, 18-8. But yellow cards, Real Salt Lake only had 2. Colorado had 3. Corner kicks, Colorado beat Real Salt Lake 6-2. So, I mean, it was a pretty much back and forth affair. Neither team really dominated stretches of possession like you would see in other leagues across the globe. But for this one, Real Salt Lake, and I've told you this before, when they're going good, when they're on their game, they're on their horse, they stretch the field in a way that not many teams in MLS can do. And what's even more impressive about this comeback win and the fact that they scored 2 goals is that Diego Luna didn't play. It was just a day off for Diego Luna, trying to get him back to full fitness before the World Cup. I completely agree with everything they're doing there. And so Real Salt Lake did it without their best player. And Zavier Gozo, I don't know if you have seen the recent rumblings surrounding this kid, but he's garnering World Cup attention. Do I think he's going to make the final cut? No, I don't. But it is a different manager of the World Cup team than we've ever had here in the U.S. So it's possible. It's not very probable, but it is possible. And he's been going nuts this season. So Real Salt Lake wins this one 2-1. Zavier Gozo scores. So does Sergi Solans, he bet on himself. He did not go to the Real Monarchs. He went to the senior club, bet on himself. A couple of guys ahead of him got injured and needed to miss time. And now Pablo Mastroeni cannot take him off the team because he has 6 goals along with Zavier Gozo. They both played 13 matches. They both have 6 goals. Diego Luna has only played in 9, but he has 4 goals. So that thing I was talking about the past year and a half with Real Salt Lake where it's Diego Luna and Chicho Arango and nobody else is scoring goals. They don't have that problem so far this season through 13 games. Through 13 games, Real Salt Lake has 8 wins, 1 draw, 4 losses for 25 points, putting them 4 points behind Vancouver and San Jose. They are 1 point up on Seattle. They're sitting at 3rd in the Western Conference. That's great. I love that. But Zavier Gozo, going back to him, he's got a very bright future, and some of the outlets out there that talk about these sort of things like transfer rumors and all of this other stuff think that Real Salt Lake can get 8 figures for Gozo when the summer transfer window opens. And he has some pretty big clubs sniffing around. He's got Atletico Madrid over in Spain. If you are unaware, you might have heard of the 2 biggest clubs in Spain, Real Madrid and FC Barcelona. Atletico is right there with them. That's the caliber of club that is interested in this kid. And then you've also got some teams in the Bundesliga over in Germany. RB Salzburg is interested. If you don't know about them, that's actually where Tyler Adams went before he went to England. So he's got some really big-time suitors interested in him. My only ask is that he doesn't go to England. Do not go to England because that's a different beast, and it'll eat you alive. You get used to European football before you get into that big league, and then you might be able to do something Clint Dempsey-esque. But I'm just going to enjoy Zavier Gozo while he's here. Sergi Solans as well. He's a rookie, and he is making waves. He also has 3 assists. Both of these guys have 3 assists on the season to go with their 6 goals. Sergi Solans might not be long for Real Salt Lake either because he could fetch 7 figures with a European club. I mean, the youth and the talent at Real Salt Lake is crazy. And what's even better is that the leadership group for Real Salt Lake, the front office, Pablo Mastroeni and his coaching staff, they put these young kids in positions to succeed, but they also allowed them to fail. Just look at the 3-1 loss to FC Dallas. You know, that was not a good game. So they put these kids out there and they just say, all right, go. Play. You know what you need to do. If you need a reminder, you're going to hear Pablo on the sideline screaming at you, but go and play. And I love that. That's how you cultivate young talent. You don't threaten them with a replacement of a veteran who is, by all accounts, probably less talented than you, but he's a safer bet, right? It's a higher floor but a lower ceiling. These kids, their ceiling is in the stratosphere. And Real Salt Lake is playing them very well, and it's very fun to watch. It is very fun to watch, and I'm enjoying it. I'm going to enjoy it until, until some transfers are made. Hopefully they don't do the same thing that they did a couple of years ago. It's a little bit different of a leadership group because a couple of years ago, we all know that, Chicho Arango left, and then they also did Anderson Julio. They also got rid of Jefferson Savarino and Matt Crooks. All of those guys gone at the same time. There was no replacement other than Diego Luna. And so the team just kind of collapsed. So I'm hoping they don't make that same mistake. They do a trickle effect where, one guy goes, maybe two guys go when the season's over, but we'll have to wait and see because sometimes you do get that Godfather offer where it's just something you just can't turn it down. But for right now with Real Salt Lake, I encourage you to watch some of their games if you can. If you can't, at least catch the highlights on YouTube because it's a fun team to watch. It really is. So that's the talk of Real Salt Lake. Third in the Western Conference. Third. And they're tied for fifth in the entire MLS in goal differential. It's not an impressive goal differential number. It's +7, but still tied for fifth. They're also tied for eighth in goals scored, 25. Third in assists at 20. So the offensive talent is really showing up for Real Salt Lake, and you can tell by how I've spoken about them today that I'm starting to turn from cautious optimism into just optimism. It is fully on the leadership group about what's going to happen. All right, so let's transition now to the Utah Mammoth and some big news about Auston Matthews. So for a lot of Mammoth fans, it's Matthews or bust this offseason. I am not among them. I don't think it's Matthews or bust because there's a few things going on here, and I'll try to lay them out for you here in a way everybody can understand. So I would love Auston Matthews on the Utah Mammoth. I think you are, I'm not going to say stupid, but you're too pessimistic of a person if you don't want to see one of the best players in U.S. history donning your sweater when he's still not even 30 years old yet. I think that's ridiculous. So, yes, Auston Matthews has a lot of mileage, but if he were to come to a market like Utah, he does not have anywhere near the amount of pressure that he's had his entire career in Toronto. Because in Toronto, it's always Stanley Cup or bust, and that's probably why they haven't won in 60-plus years. But that's just like the caveat, laying the groundwork for everyone here. Do I want to see Auston Matthews in Salt Lake City? Absolutely. 100%. Now, let's talk about all of the different factors, all of the different rumors and news swirling around, not just Auston Matthews, but the Utah Mammoth. So first, let's talk about what's going on in Toronto right now. The new GM they have, John Chayka, was the GM for the Arizona Coyotes back when they existed, and he ran the organization so poorly that he was caught cheating, and the franchise was forced to forfeit their 2 first-round picks in 2020 and 2021. They were forced to forfeit them. What did he do? Well, a lot, but the thing that kind of boiled over the top for the league offices was that he held private workouts and tryouts, and that's not allowed when it comes to prospects and all that stuff. Everybody gets the same information in the NHL. There's no private workouts. There's nothing like that. John Chayka thought he could get away with it, and he didn't. Another rumor is that when ownership was walking through the offices, he would have, and this is just a funny one. I've talked about it before, I think. It's just a funny rumor. I don't think it's true, but it's a funny story. And I mean, who among us hasn't done this that have worked in an office environment? But he had multiple monitors up, and he had fake information about players up on those monitors when ownership was walking by, just so it looked like he was smarter than he was, or, that he was busier than he was. I mean, who among us has not done that? Just at least once when senior leadership is walking by your computer. Come on. You can't tell me you haven't done it just once. So that's a funny rumor. That's not one I believe, really. I mean, it could be. But the real rumor, like the real talk about John Chayka is that he presents himself to be smarter than he actually is, that he's the hero in every story. That's not really a guy I want leading anything. So that is who Toronto has as their new GM. They also have franchise legend Matt Sundin as president of hockey operations, probably there to help rein in Chayka when he gets out of control. So we'll see what happens. Toronto also just fired their coach, Craig Berube, and everything that I'm reading about it just says that was a long time coming, and it's just another thing in sports where when a team gets a new general manager, if there is an incumbent head coach, that head coach is likely gone. He is. That's just how it works. The general manager wants his own guy. So that's what happened. And so Craig Berube's gone. They are on the search for a new head coach. The hot candidate that is out there is Bruce Cassidy, formerly of the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't know if he would fit in Toronto, but, you know, I don't know if the ownership of Toronto is panicking, but it kind of feels like they might be because they just hired John Chayka to try to fix a franchise when the last franchise he led went into the toilet. So that's where we're at there with Toronto. Auston Matthews. Auston Matthews hasn't said anything about the new GM. He hasn't said anything about the head coaching search. And it was said many, many times that the firing of Craig Berube had nothing to do with the players. It was completely John Chayka's call. All right, cool. So where does that leave the Utah Mammoth in all of that mess? Well, Jeff Merrick, an NHL analyst who used to work for one of the top places in Canada for hockey, he said that he expects Matthews to go west if he requests a trade, and he expects Auston Matthews to list Western Conference teams, and he said he thinks the Mammoth have the best possible trade package to send back to Toronto. I don't know if Utah has the best, because there are going to be desperate teams that will send back NHL level talent that is on the younger side to Toronto in a deal, and then they're going to bundle up their entire future for it. I think there are desperate teams out there that would do that, namely Chicago. But what Utah can offer is a lot. GM Bill Armstrong has done a wonderful job of stockpiling talent. The cupboard is bursting with guys that are ready for the NHL. You got guys like Dmitry Simashev, Caleb Desnoyers, Tidge Aginla, who, by the way, I was the only one who called that the Utah Hockey Club was going to draft that kid back then. I have the receipts. I have the episode. Anyway, Tidge Aginla. You have Cole Baudouin. There is Artyom Duda, Max Psanitska. There's a lot of guys in the talent pool that are ready to be called up to the big leagues. And so when you look at that, you think, yeah, there's probably a lot there that Toronto would like in a deal back. But how much? How much of that group is Bill Armstrong willing to part with to get the superstar? That's the question. Mammoth fans are thinking, it's time to go for it. The window's open. Championship window. I'm not in that group. If a deal can be struck, do it. If Utah is on that short list from Auston Matthews, should he say, yes, I want to be traded. We tried. I need a new start. Toronto needs a new start. Let's just do this. I would say, yes, go for it, but also know who you're bidding against. If that list is made, not necessarily public, but available to the GMs, knowing who you're bidding against, that will help. But some of the mock trades I've been seeing, and yeah, I do read mock trades. They're all ridiculous. They're all dumb. They don't think about it from all angles like a GM would. It's not going to happen. Like, I see some people saying Barrett Hayton, Caleb Desnoyers, and a first-round pick. That's not enough. That's not enough. Like, Toronto has to be able to sell this to their own market, which is akin to saying the New York Giants need to sell a trade of prime Eli Manning to the back then San Diego. Well, I can't do that one because he didn't want to play for San Diego. Let's go Arizona Cardinals. And saying you're only going to be getting back, a backup tight end. That's not going to work. Okay. So these mock trades are just ridiculous all over the place, even from people that are paid to talk about this sort of thing are pretty ridiculous. So all of this to be said, this all is just on Auston Matthews. His future is in his own hands here. Does he still want to continue to play in Toronto? Does he still want to be under that microscope? Because it feels like, to me, by the end of the season, before he even got injured, he was just tired. He was tired of the Toronto media, of the Toronto, the portion of the Toronto fan base that has always been against him, seemingly rooting for him to fail. And so that's just what it felt like to me. Does that mean he wants to come to Utah? I don't know. Maybe not. But what Utah can send back is a pretty darn good package. Could it be the best package? I'm going to have to disagree with Jeff Marek and say no, because there's always a desperate team that is willing to make a stupid trade for a superstar. Always, always, always. Herschel Walker. Yeah, let me bring that one up. Minnesota was desperate for a star. They mortgaged their future, and Dallas Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls, based on a lot of what that trade got them back. So I'm just out here saying, do I want it to happen? Absolutely. Is it going to happen the way that Utah Mammoth fans would like? Absolutely not. Because in trades, especially for superstars, you're going to have to overpay. That's just the nature of it. Even if the trade market is very slim and it's you and 2 other teams, you're still going to have to pay quite a bit. So that's just something I want to warn everybody about, because in reality, not in a video game, not in your fantasy league, in reality, it takes a lot to move a superstar. And then you also have to factor in the salary cap. The salary cap is a hard cap, meaning you cannot go over it. So, how does Utah make the money work? You're going to have to lose a couple of your favorite players on your team. You just are. So as the offseason goes along, I'll continue to talk about that. Update on Brady Tkachuk. He is not going to be on the trade market at all. The Ottawa front office has shut down all conversations about it. Brady Tkachuk has said he never wanted out, and so all of that rumor was ridiculous. So anybody who thought Brady Tkachuk would be available, not the case. He's done. He's gone. So that leaves Auston Matthews. It leaves potentially Connor McDavid, and it also leaves Robert Thomas. Those are the big 3 to look for Utah. Among those, I want Auston Matthews the most, but Robert Thomas would be a fantastic consolation prize. And then please don't go after Connor McDavid. Don't do it. Fantastic player, one of the best all time. Just not a good teammate from what I can tell. All right, so that's the Mammoth update I wanted to talk about for the Utah Mammoth. And then lastly here, let's talk about the award favorites for the 2 schools here in Utah, BYU and Utah. First, I want to talk about something a little bit kind of ridiculous that ESPN put together. And I think it's because Kyle Bonagura didn't do much of a deep dive into these rosters, just up and down, outside of the top 5. So he has, for the Utah Utes, Devin Dampier on Heisman watch. Yeah. His reasoning is stats. And he said 5 quarterbacks have thrown for at least 3,000 yards, rushed for 1,000, and won at least 11 games in a season. All were Heisman finalists. After Dampier threw for 2,400 yards and ran for 800 last year for the Utes, it's clear he's capable of putting together that sort of season. Is it, Kyle? With a brand new offensive coordinator? Brand new offensive stuff? Losing basically his entire offensive line in front of him? Losing his top wide receiving options? I'm sorry, Kyle. You didn't really do much of a deep dive there. Devin Dampier is a fabulous player. He is. Absolutely 100%. He's not going to throw for more than 3,000 yards next year. He's just not. That's not how Utah is built. Will he run for over 1,000? Maybe, if he can stay healthy. But again, we're in May. So I'm not going to dive too deep into that. I just thought it was kind of ridiculous that you have Devin Dampier on Heisman watch. But, I mean, it's a little bit better than what he did for, like, Oklahoma. Lou Groza Award. Yeah, Oklahoma fans are going to love that one. And for BYU, it's LJ Martin for the Doak Walker Award. I mean, yes, but that's the obvious choice. So, yeah, LJ Martin stays healthy for the entire year. He runs like he did last year. He's only going to get in more shape this offseason. He's basically a full-grown adult now. So, if he can build off of 1,300 yards and get up to like 1,500, I could see a Doak Walker Award, the second one in BYU history. After Luke Staley, one of my favorite all-time BYU players. I loved Luke Staley. Oh, my goodness. So that could definitely happen for LJ Martin. I think he would be a finalist for sure. He could win it. He really could. I don't know how the offense is going to go. I don't think they're going to rely as much on LJ Martin and the running game as they did during Bear Bachmeier's freshman season. But with the uncertainty at the wide receiver position, with Chase Roberts going to the NFL, I don't know what's going to happen there. It's all going to be predicated on how fall camp goes, I think. So, those are just two things I wanted to bring to your attention that ESPN did here recently that I think is a little ridiculous. Devin Dampier for Heisman, come on. Come on. I would love to see it. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see it. But it's not going to happen. He's not going to throw for 3,000 yards. He's not. He's just not. All right. So there you go there. For the Utah Jazz, there have been so many just absolute garbage trade proposals. And what are we going to do in the draft? Are they going to trade back? Is Danny Ainge going to do another Boston Celtics thing? No. He's not. That's already happened. Every GM worth their salt, worth 1% of their salary, is not going to make a trade with Danny Ainge on draft day or in the days leading up to the draft. They're not. Nobody wants to be bamboozled like the Brooklyn Nets were. It's just not going to happen. Or the Philadelphia 76ers when it was Markelle Fultz over Jason Tatum. That's not going to happen this time. For many reasons, but first, if we want to use that Markelle Fultz parallel, there's more than just two guys that people think are going to be all-stars in this draft. There's 4. There could be 5, actually. So that's not going to happen. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of is, will the Jazz move Ace Bailey or Lauri Markkanen to get to number 1? No, they are not. Those two guys are part of the future. They're part of the now and they're part of the future. So no, the Jazz are not going to do that either. The Jazz are perfectly happy sitting at number 2 and then letting the Washington Wizards do Wizards things and screw up the first pick. If Utah can make a deal for that first overall pick where it's this year's second overall pick and a future first, maybe a couple of future firsts from either Cleveland or Minnesota, I'm sure that Danny Ainge would do that trade. Yes, but it's going to take more than that. And I don't think Utah wants to do that. And also, there's a bevy of riches at number 2. Are you kidding? The one team that can screw this up is Washington. Otherwise, Utah has the pick of the litter. And I'm going to continue to say this until the draft. If they don't get A.J. DeBonsa, does that suck? Yeah, because A.J. DeBonsa said he enjoyed playing in Utah, and it's very rare that you get basketball players saying that, especially of the caliber of A.J. DeBonsa. But there's Darren Peterson, Caleb Wilson, and even Cam Boozer. Those are great consolation prizes. So over this offseason and before the draft, I'll talk about this more, but I just wanted to let you know I think it's all ridiculous. But thank you all so much for being here this week. Next week, it'll be more off-season talk, and I will see you then when you spelunk back into the Matt Cave.